ברוך אתה אדוני מלך העולם שהכל יתברך.
Amém.
חי וחי וברכה. Okay, folks, welcome. Good morning. We're going to start a new mimer, a new discourse. And although Yom Kippur is a few days ahead of us, actually, in 2 days will be the eve of Yom Kippur. But we're going to start with a discourse on Sukkot. That will be a week tonight. And this is a Hasidic discourse said in 1979, Tavshin Mem, 5780. And I was there. Can't say that I recall the mimer so well. But I'll have recall now by learning it together with you. Okay, the discourse begins with a verse in Parshas Emor, in the book of Vayikra Leviticus, near the end. It goes through the holidays, and it says, Besukkos Teshvu, in Sukkos, right, these booths, Teshvu, you shall dwell, Shivas Yamim, 7 days, Kol Ezrach, the Israel, all a native Israel, Yeshvu Besukkos, shall dwell in Sukkos. Then the verse continues with a reason for doing this mitzvah, Lama'an, in order, Yedu, that they should know, that you should know, the Resechem, for all generations, for all of your generations, meaning forthcoming generations. Kivas Sukkos, because in Sukkos, in booths. Hoshafti, I, Hashem, have made them dwell as Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. When? When I took them out, Oisam, them, Me'eres Mitzrayim, to the land of Egypt. Right? 40 years that the Jewish people were in Egypt, when they went out of Egypt in the desert, right? God made them booths that protected them. Now, what does that mean? Actual booths, it's got a double meaning. The actual dwelling also means the clouds of glory that protected them. Right? In a sense, that's what it means, that he made them. No, sorry, that he made them dwell. Meaning, how do you live in a desert for 40 years? Right? Well, God protected them with the clouds of glory during the day and pillars of fire by night. They were protected in the desert. Okay. So by the fact that the verse says lema'an, which means in order, we learn out from here that the awareness, this awareness, is not just the intent of the mitzvah, right? In other words, every mitzvah, there's the action of the mitzvah, and then its intent. The mindfulness of it, if you will. Like, tefillin. There's a mindfulness, is that you're connecting your mind, where you have one box, and against your heart, the second one, that you're connecting mind and heart together. That's called an intent of the mitzvah. If you don't think about that, you still fulfill the mitzvah, for example, right? But here it's different. Because it says the word laman, in order, so it makes it sound, the implication is that it's actually a part of the mitzvah. this awareness that God took us out of Egypt and made us dwell in booths, right? Now, so it's known because this verse is a well-known, traveled verse that is been explained by all of the Rabbeim, and the exactingness on this verse. So let's get into some of the more precise wording and the precision in the terminology of the verse and the questions thereof. So the first thing is, based on this, like, why is this awareness so important that it becomes a part of the mitzvah, as opposed to a intent in the mitzvah? Furthermore, the words "besukais teshvu" and "a sukkah you shall dwell" are like opposite ideas. What does that mean? A sukkah is something that is encompasses a person, right? And dwelling is something like encompassing means it's transcendent of you, right? Which physically it is. And also conceptually, in the spirit of what it is, it's also beyond the individual, right? On the other hand, it says teshvu. Teshvu means to dwell. Well, dwelling means the opposite is kind of to bring it in. Like he's yashvus, settled. Like, are you settled? Meaning, are you settled within yourself? As opposed to something that's beyond yourself, right? When you're not settled, sometimes because something beyond you took place. When you're settled, well, you internalized it, and it's, from within you're good. So, those are two opposite ideas. Something beyond you, which is the sukkah, and settled dwelling is internalized from within you. So we need to, so right, so those two things are coming together. So by the fact that it says in sukkahs, right? In other words, you're in the sukkah, meaning you're in the makif, you're in the transcendence, that's where you are. It means that even after you come and you dwell there still is remaining something transcendent. Dwelling meaning dwelling from within, right? Again, meaning internalized. Even after you internalize, you still are remaining besukkos, in the sukkah, meaning in something that's transcendent. That's the idea. Excuse me 1 second. In other words, as much as you're settled, meaning internalized, right? Again, that's the idea of what it means. Dwelling means to be at home. Be at home means at home from within, right? Unsettled is because there's something beyond you that has not been internalized. So you're unsettled. So here, the idea of sukkah, because you're in the sukkah, so your dwelling, you're in whatever you've internalized, is still beyond you. There's still an aspect beyond you. That's the idea of these two opposites coming together. So in other words, this internalizing still needs to be in an aspect of transcendence, makif, encompassing. Encompassing. Okay, so that's also an idea. That's the idea. Now, what does that mean exactly? We just gave the shell, the concept. What does that mean? Also, we need to understand the verse says, Kola Ezrach B'Israel, all the native Israelites, Yeshua Sukkahs, they shall dwell in a sukkah. So the first part of the verse says, B'Sukkos Teshuvah Shivas Yamim. In Sukkahs, you shall dwell 7 days. That's a command. Who's the command to? Well, every single Jew, not making a distinction. But the end of the verse is making a distinction. A native Israelite. What does that mean? A native Israelite. And it doesn't say that they should dwell for 7 days. It says, Yeshua Sukkos, dwell in a sukkah. Open-ended. So we need to understand, what is this talking about? Interesting. How when you look at a verse and you could see so much. Furthermore, our sages in Tractate Sukkah, good place, makes sense. They learn out from these words, Kol Ezra Yisrael Yesh Sukkahs, that all of the native Israelites should dwell in a sukkah. They learn from here that it's fitting that all of the Jewish people are fitting to sit in one sukkah. I'll tell you the truth, I'm like looking at this now, and I'm not clear how they get that from these words. Well, I mean, I get it because it says Kol Yisrael. No, sorry, yeah, Kol Yisrael. Every Jew. Sorry. Kol Ezra, Israel. All the natives in Israel, Yeshu v'sukkos, they shall dwell in sukkos. So I don't know how they get it from here. There'll be one sukkah because it says sukkos, not sukkah, which sukkos is plural. I have to look that up because it doesn't. But in any case, barring the understanding of, I mean, need to understand how the limud, how they are learning it out from these words. But so the sages learn out from these words that we're fitting to sit under one roof, under one sukkah. Now, which is obviously bringing out, obviously it's bringing out the idea of the unity of the Jewish people, right? You need a pretty good engineer and a pretty good architect that the Jewish people should dwell under one sukkah, right? Have to do a pretty good job there. Okay, we got some good engineers and some good architects, But this is what, and others are fitting, which brings out the idea of unity of the entire Jewish people under one roof, under one holy roof of a sukkah. But we need to understand this idea of unity of the Jewish people, which we had in Parshas Nitzavim, right before Rosh Hashanah, we read. Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kolchem, that you are standing today, all of you, right? So that's an idea of unity, that all of us are standing before God, is also throughout the entire year. Right? Idea of unity. Till the extent that we have a mitzvah of Avas Yisrael, of loving a fellow Jew. And why do we have a mitzvah to love a fellow Jew? Is because we really, our souls are rooted in the same place above, as we have one Father for all of us. As explained in chapter 32 of Tanya. Right? That, as the Alter Rebbe adds there the word that we are brothers, and he adds the word mamish literally, because from the vantage point of the soul, we are literally brothers. From the vantage point of the body, we're not literally brothers, because we have different father, different mother. But from the vantage point of the soul comes from the same root source above. It may migrate itself down and picks up different things, one soul versus another soul. So there's distinction in soul, more in its functionality than it is in its root source. Its root source, coming from the same place. And as a result of this unity of the Jewish people, right? Remember, our verse wants to bring out a unity that we're fitting to sit under as one sukkah, to bring out a unity, but that unity already exists the whole year with the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, of a love of a fellow Jew. Again, because our souls are rooted in the same source, Avav. And so much so is this like an essential reality that the famous story with the would-be convert that came to Hillel, that he said that that this is the one mitzvah, and the rest is all an explanation of this one mitzvah. In other words, that we know that the soul is primary in our lives. That's really what every mitzvah is about. Because when the soul's primaries, then we'll be connected with each other. Because from that point of view, we are connected. We are united. So unity is there already amongst the Jewish people. So not only is the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael there, but really the mitzvah of Avos Yisrael, the loving a fellow Jew, is really the basis of every single mitzvah. Because every single mitzvah, you're making your soul primary. So the unity is there at all times. So what is now the holiday of Sukkot coming? And that we are fitting as a Jewish people to sit under one rooftop, right? Again, engineering and architectural, feat, but the concept is about the unity. What is that giving and adding that is obviously more than the achdus that comes, the unity that comes through Avos Yisrael. Another quick. Also we need to understand is that before this verse, the verse prior to it, it says, "Lakachtam lachem b'yom take for yourselves on the first day, Priyetz Hadar, a beautiful fruit, which refers to Esrei, Tamorim, Kapos Tamorim, from the date, take from the leaf of the date tree, right? That's the lulav. Anav eitz avos, a branch which is referring to hadassim, arvei nachol, and willows from the river. Now we know that this mitzvah is connected. Okay, let's just quickly finish. That this mitzvah is connected to Sukkot. How so? Even though it's a separate mitzvah, but it's connected because it's preferable to make the blessing over the 4 species in a sukkah, right? And others, we need to have the awareness that we're in a sukkah, this idea of transcendence that's beyond us, right? In order that we draw down from a transcendent divine place, as the Arizal explains, to draw down on das from above to the feminine quality of Zod, the 7 emotions, which is in the heart. So that's when you take you take it in all directions, and then you bring it to your heart when you do the non-knowing, when you're doing the shaking of the lulav, right? In other words, you're bringing it into your heart. Okay, so you need to understand that idea. All right, we got a lot of questions. We will continue. The Ezra Hashem with answers, God willing.